When the transmission first came in, it wasn't in any language known to man. It was a vibration, deep, sonorous, almost organic. The sort of frequency you felt in your bones more than heard. The signal came from beyond the Orion Spire, past the frozen dust of the Perseus Arc, where the stars grew faint and old. At first, no one cared much. Space was full of static and dying beacons from forgotten empires. But then the readings came back, and something about them terrified the astrophysicists. The waveform had a pulse, a rhythm like a heartbeat. On the deep space station Kestrel 9, orbiting a red dwarf whose light never reached its own moons, Chief Engineer Marcus Hale sat alone in the observation dome when he decoded the message. Not with instruments, but with intuition. He'd been out here too long, and solitude had tuned his mind to the whispers of machines and the breathing of stars. He knew the difference between an echo of metal and a cry for help. That night, when the others slept in their cryo-cots, he ran the harmonic sequence through the engineering AI. The output was absurd. A three-dimensional pulse pattern, translating to a structure the size of a small continent, buried in the shadow belt between two dead moons. But it wasn't rock or metal. The readings suggested tissue, living, massive, but barely registering any heat. It was dying. Marcus had seen many things in his service to the Galactic Accord: shattered hulls, dead worlds, wrecked colonies. But the word alive always carried weight. He sent no report to command. He just loaded his repair shuttle with diagnostic drones, reactor stabilizers, and medical scaffolds meant for biometal hulls. He told the crew AI, "Log me as off-duty maintenance." It didn't ask questions. Machines never did. The flight out was silent. The stars seemed to thin the deeper he went, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. The object's coordinates drew him toward a gravitational hollow where light bent lazily, like syrup around a spoon. And then he saw it. At first glance, it looked like a fractured asteroid the size of a city. But as he approached, his scanners began to paint something impossible. Scales, each the length of a human ship, dulled and cracked. Beneath them, biothermal veins flickered weakly. The shape resolved itself slowly until he realized he was looking into the slumbering face of something ancient and titanic. A dragon. Not in metaphor or art, but real, physical, and alive in the black of space. Its wings, if they could be called that, were membranous constructs spanning kilometers, more like folded solar sails of living matter. Its chest cavity pulsed faintly, emitting a slow, irregular beat, and near its heart, his sensors detected catastrophic damage. A void the size of a shuttle bay, leaking faint plasma and starlight. Something had pierced it long ago. Marcus floated there for a long while, his shuttle dwarfed by the curve of its chest. The sight filled him with the same fear and wonder a cave painter must have felt when staring at a storm. He finally whispered, "You're dying, aren't you?" His comm system flared. Not in words, but a vibration. The same deep tone he'd first heard in the transmission. It resonated through the hull, shaking tools loose from their hooks. And then, like a whisper forced through centuries of silence, came a thought. "Little light. Who hears me?" Marcus froze. The voice was neither male nor female, but vast, exhausted, ancient. It spoke not in language, but in raw emotion. He felt its pain as a vibration behind his eyes. He didn't know if he was answering aloud or with thought when he said, "I'm an engineer. I fix things. Then fix me, little light, or let me fall silent." The decision came before reason. Marcus guided his shuttle alongside the fissure in the creature's chest. His instruments screamed at him. Radiation, gravitational distortion, magnetic chaos. But he ignored them all. Humanity had always been a race of fixers, of dreamers who touched the untouchable. And this was the ultimate machine, a living engine of starlight and myth. He anchored the ship to the creature's side, extending repair drones into the wound. They transmitted back grainy video feeds, vast caverns of pulsating muscle, veins like highways, and deep within, something flickering erratically. A heart the size of a fusion core, cracked along its crystalline surface. Energy bled from it like blood. Marcus stared at the readings. The structure wasn't entirely organic. The lattice resembled something between a reactor and an organ, a fusion of biology and physics that human science couldn't begin to explain. "You're not just alive," he murmured. "You're engineered." "We were born when the first suns sang," came the voice weakly. "The makers built us to keep the stars burning. But time forgets even gods." Marcus shivered. He couldn't tell if it was reverence or cold. His gloved hands danced across the console, deploying repair nanites into the dragon's bloodstream. "If your heart stops," he said quietly, "your core will implode. It'll collapse this entire sector. Then hurry, little light. I am tired." He worked for hours, maybe days. Time lost meaning. The drones drilled micro-injectors into the damaged core, feeding it, stabilizing plasma. He rewired conduits that weren't metal, but glowing veins of photonic tissue. He whispered to the dragon to stay awake. Sometimes it answered with fragmented memories, of flying between newborn stars, of burning alongside civilizations that no longer existed, of losing others of its kind to the cold. Between each task, Marcus paused to stare through the viewport at its immense form. In those moments, he felt smaller than he ever had, yet more human than ever before. When he reached the heart itself, he exited the shuttle. His suit's magnetic boots clicked against the crystalline surface of the dragon's chest. The damage was immense, a fracture running across the entire organ, pulsing weakly like a broken sun. He placed his gloved palm on it. The thrum beneath it was fading. "I need to bridge the fracture," he said, thinking aloud. "Stabilize the energy field. But I don't have enough power." He thought for a moment, then glanced up toward the shuttle. Unless he rerouted his ship's entire core to the repair array. It would drain everything: life support, propulsion, communications. Once he started, there'd be no turning back. "If this doesn't work," he muttered, "we both die." "So be it," came the dragon's faint whisper. "Better to fall with one who listens." He triggered the sequence. The shuttle's reactor whined, discharging arcs of raw plasma through conduits into the heart's repair lattice. The air shimmered around him. His suit alarms wailed, heat spiking, radiation climbing. He ignored them. He watched as the crystalline heart began to glow, light crawling along the fracture like molten veins reawakening. The entire chest cavity began to hum. Then the sound deepened, a low, earth-shaking rumble that reverberated through space. The dragon's wings twitched. Its tail shifted, stirring clouds of dust that had lain motionless for millennia. The light intensified, flooding his visor until everything went white. When the brightness faded, he was floating in silence. His tether had snapped. His ship was dark. For a moment he thought he'd failed, until he saw the movement. The dragon's eyes opened. They were not eyes in the human sense, but twin stars burning blue-white, filled with impossible depth. They focused on him, a single man adrift before a living cosmos. "You mended me," it said softly, though its voice now carried a quiet strength. "You gave back what time had taken." Marcus barely breathed. You were dying." "I still am, little light, but not tonight." He watched as its massive wings unfolded, scattering stardust like embers. The creature's entire body glowed with renewed life, and for a moment the void around them shimmered, constellations bending subtly, as though reacting to its awakening. The stars themselves seemed to shift. Then Marcus's comm crackled, faint, human static. His suit had lost its main connection, but the emergency line was still active. "Engineer Hale," a distant voice said. "You've gone off-grid for 86 hours. What in hell are you—" He cut the line. The idea of explaining what he'd just witnessed felt absurd. Humanity wouldn't believe him. Hell, he wasn't sure he believed him. The dragon regarded him with something like amusement. "You fear your own kind will not understand. They seldom do." He drifted closer, staring at the glowing scars that still pulsed faintly. "If I hadn't found you, the stars would fade a little sooner," it replied. "You humans! You build, you fix, you hope. You do not realize how loud your light burns in the dark." Marcus smiled faintly. "We just don't like giving up." "Then perhaps the cosmos chose well," the dragon said. "Rest now, little light. You have done enough for this night." Its wings flexed once, and the shockwave sent him tumbling backward. Before he could right himself, the dragon's immense body dissolved into radiant fragments, dispersing like dust caught in sunlight, merging with the void, with the light of the distant stars. And yet, the stars moved. Constellations that had been static for centuries began to pulse, faintly, as if something ancient had stirred behind them. Marcus floated there breathless, his ship lifeless, his oxygen timer blinking red, and still, he could not look away from that sky. He realized then that he had just helped restart something vast, a chain reaction not of machinery, but of life itself. Somewhere across the galaxy, the stars were waking, and all he could do was whisper into the silence, "What are you?" The reply came not in sound but in feeling. Warmth, light, gratitude, guardian. Then the light was gone. Marcus drifted alone in the void, tether cut, power gone, and only the slow heartbeat of distant stars to keep him company. But deep inside him, something new had begun to beat in answer. When Marcus woke, everything was white. At first he thought he'd died, that the bright haze was the threshold of whatever came next. But then he heard the steady beep of a monitor, and felt the weight of gravity pressing him into a bed. His throat burned like he'd swallowed starlight. Slowly shapes came into focus. Sterile walls, soft blue light, the faint hum of life support. A medbay. Human. He turned his head and saw the flag of the Galactic Accord stitched into the wall fabric. He was alive. Barely. The door hissed open. Commander Lyra Kale stepped inside, her face sharp and tired. "You've been out for 3 days, Hale," she said, her voice tight with disbelief and reprimand. "We found your shuttle adrift near the Perseus Arc. No power, no transponder, no data logs. What the hell were you doing out there?" Marcus tried to answer, but his throat cracked instead of producing words. She poured him water, watched him drink, then folded her arms. "We thought you were dead. Half the fleet went looking for you. And when we finally find your ship, radiation readings off the charts, structural damage like it went through a supernova. You're floating in your suit like a damn ghost." He stared at the ceiling for a long moment, feeling the weight of what he'd seen pressing on him like a second gravity. "You wouldn't believe me," he said finally. "Try me," she said, so he told her. Not everything, not yet. He told her about the signal, about finding something alive in the void, about trying to repair it. He left out what it was. He didn't say dragon. He said entity. He said living construct. Even then, as the words came out, they sounded insane. When he finished, she didn't speak. She just stared at him, expression unreadable. Then she activated a hollow screen above his bed. "You said it was sending a rhythmic transmission. Like this?" The waveform appeared, steady, deep, resonant. Marcus blinked. "That's it," he said, pulse quickening. She nodded slowly. "It's still broadcasting." He sat upright despite the pain in his ribs. "What?" Lyra zoomed the display outward. The signal wasn't just repeating. It was spreading. Dozens of points across the galactic map pulsed in synchronization, each one distant but following the same rhythm. "Since you vanished," she said quietly, "these have started lighting up one by one. At first we thought it was a system malfunction, but every observatory is picking it up. Something's waking out there." Marcus couldn't speak. He remembered the dragon's last words. The shimmer in the constellations. The stars would fade a little sooner. Unless they didn't. Lyra's tone hardened. "What did you do, Hale?" He met her gaze. "I fixed something." That earned him a week of debriefings. Interrogations, more like. Scientists demanded readings. Engineers demanded data, and the military demanded answers. They wanted coordinates, power signatures, proof. Marcus had none. His shuttle systems had fried during the surge, and the only surviving record was the radiation pattern imprinted on his suit, a fingerprint of impossible energy. The analysts said it resembled neither fusion nor antimatter, something else entirely. By the second week, the scientists had named it the Hale resonance, the pattern of the pulse. Some began whispering about star life, about a galactic lattice of energy beings that might have slumbered since the dawn of creation. Others called it a myth. Command called it classified. Marcus just called it real. They kept him confined to the observation deck after that, a gilded cage with a window facing the star field he had disturbed. At night, he watched the patterns grow. The stars flickered in impossible unison now, forming faint lines of geometry that only he seemed to notice, like constellations shifting under some unseen guidance. He could almost hear them hum. Sometimes, in the silence, he'd close his eyes and hear her again. The dragon's voice, soft, distant, but unmistakable. "Little light, can you hear the song?" He'd sit up sharply, eyes wide. The room would be empty, but the whisper lingered in the air, resonating faintly in the ship's hull. He thought he was losing his mind. Then came the day the sky cracked. It started with a tremor through the Kestrel's hull, followed by alarms. Marcus stumbled from his quarters as red lights flashed. "Report!" someone shouted down the corridor. "Mass fluctuation at Sector 9. Gravity lens forming. No, wait! Multiple!" By the time Marcus reached the observation dome, the void outside was boiling. Ripples of light surged like waves across the stars. One of the younger officers stared in horror. "Are those ships?" They weren't. They were wings. Dozens, hundreds, of vast, translucent shapes were materializing from the dark, unfurling like solar sails made of flame and shadow. Each one colossal, alive, luminous. Dragons. Star dragons. Their scales shimmered with nebular color, their bodies trailing cosmic dust like tails of comets. The largest among them eclipsed entire planets. The smaller ones danced between them, weaving in coordinated spirals. The sky was alive, the crew was paralyzed. No sensors could make sense of it. No weapons locked. The creatures emitted no threat, only light and sound, frequencies that trembled through the hull like symphonies. Marcus pressed a hand to the glass, his heart hammering. "They're singing," he whispered. And they were. The hum that filled the space station wasn't random. It was harmony. Thousands of voices weaving together into something vast and mournful. It wasn't an invasion. It was a requiem. One of the younger techs, trembling, turned to Marcus. You knew this would happen." He didn't answer. He couldn't. He felt tears burning behind his eyes, not from fear, but awe. Through the viewports, the dragons began aligning themselves into geometric formations, rings, spirals, lines. The station's power fluctuated as gravitational fields rippled across the sector. Lyra's voice came through the intercom, calm but strained. "All hands brace. Whatever they're doing, it's affecting the local star's corona. Energy buildup is exponential." Marcus didn't move. He understood. They weren't destroying anything. They were repairing. He could see it in the patterns, the same rhythm as before, the pulse of the hail resonance. He whispered, "They're healing the star." The process lasted hours. When it was done, the red dwarf that Kestrel 9 orbited no longer glowed dull and dying. It burned bright gold, rejuvenated. The dragons began to drift away, their forms fading back into the cosmic dark, leaving behind a reborn sun. The crew erupted in chaotic disbelief. Recorders, sensors, frantic chatter. Marcus just stared, silent. Then, through the static of the comms, a deep, familiar voice rolled through. "Little light." Every console froze. The sound came through every frequency at once. A voice that wasn't sound but gravity, time, memory. The crew gasped. Marcus felt his pulse jump. "I'm here," he said, barely audible. "You woke the first of us," the voice said. And through her, the rest remembered their song. "The stars will breathe again." Lyra's voice crackled over the channel, whispering to no one in particular. "Who is that?" The dragon's tone softened. "One of many. The guardian who mended me now carries the spark of the makers. Protect it, for there are those who will not let the stars shine free." Before anyone could respond, the signal faded, leaving a silence heavier than gravity. For days after, the galaxy rippled with wonder and fear. Observatories across hundreds of systems reported sightings of luminous creatures passing through their skies, leaving trails of renewed starlight in their wake. Empires that had warred for centuries declared ceasefires out of sheer awe. Scientists broke down on live broadcasts. Priests called it divinity. Command called it a threat. And in the middle of it all, Marcus Hale sat in his cell-like quarters, staring at his reflection in the viewport. His eyes glowed faintly now, just a shimmer, only visible in darkness. The medics said it was radiation residue. He knew better. He could feel the hum beneath his skin, the faint echo of that cosmic heartbeat. When Lyra visited him again, her expression was different. Not anger this time, fear. "They want to move you to Central Command," she said. "For your own safety, they claim. But I've seen the orders. They're calling you the Catalyst." "Let them call me what they want," he murmured. "I didn't start this, didn't you?" she asked quietly. "You touched something that was never meant for us." He looked past her to the stars. Maybe it was always meant for us. Maybe they were waiting for someone to remember how to care. She sighed, stepped closer. "Marcus, the dragons, or whatever they are, aren't just healing stars. Some of them are moving toward inhabited systems. People are panicking. The Council is preparing defensive fleets." "They don't need defense," he said. "They need to listen." "You think they'll listen to you?" He smiled faintly. "They already are." He reached out to the viewport. The stars pulsed again, faintly, in rhythm with his heartbeat. That night, he dreamed. Not the kind of dream a man has, but something older. He saw the dragon he had saved, drifting through a sea of light. Around her were others, giants of flame and starlight, circling him as if acknowledging something sacred. One of them lowered its immense head until its eye filled the sky. "Little light," it said, "you have mended more than a heart. You have mended the song." When he awoke, his room was vibrating with a low hum. The monitors flickered. The lights dimmed. Outside the viewport, the stars were shifting again, forming lines, symbols, constellations in motion. Patterns no telescope had ever recorded. He pressed his hand to the glass. "They're calling," he whispered. And from somewhere deep in the void the answer came. Faint, but unmistakable. "Then come, little light. The song is not yet whole." By dawn's cycle, Kestrel 9's security team found his room empty. No breach, no trace. Just a faint shimmer of energy where he'd stood, and the lingering echo of a heartbeat fading into the stars. Out beyond the Perseus Arc, the constellations shifted once more. For a moment, they aligned into the shape of a dragon with outstretched wings, and at its heart glowed a single, small light, human and defiant, moving steadily toward the dark. And across the quiet expanse of the galaxy, the stars themselves seemed to whisper his name. The void between galaxies was not black. It shimmered faintly like ink stirred with light. Marcus Hale floated within that impossible gulf, though he was no longer sure what counted as floating. His body was matter still, but less than before. His senses stretched beyond flesh. Around him the dragons moved like living nebulae, each scale a constellation, each wingbeat rippling through the fabric of space like waves across a cosmic ocean. They were vast, yet graceful, silent yet singing. And Marcus, a single human spark among them, felt not small but connected. Their voices were not speech but resonance, felt through the marrow of existence. "You carry the Maker's touch," one whispered, its tone the color of deep gold. "The heart you mended was the first of us, the Heartkeeper." Her awakening sang through the lattice, and we heard. Marcus couldn't tell if he was speaking aloud or with thought anymore. "You said the Makers built you. Who were they?" A pause. Then a voice like gravity itself. "Those who first gave form to the stars. They burned bright and brief. When their kind perished, they left us to tend the flame." He tried to process it. The dragons were custodians of creation itself, engines that kept suns alive. But if they had slept for eons, what had silenced them? Another answered, a younger voice, sharp as plasma. Silence did not come from time. It was imposed. The void choir sang the unmaking. Marcus frowned. "The what?" "The ones who hunger for stillness. They seek the quiet between stars, the end of song. They came when the Makers fell, and we hid, lest the galaxy fall tonight eternal." His gut tightened. "You mean something tried to kill you?" to end all of this. It will come again, the Golden One said. Already it stirs, drawn by your light. He felt the truth of it deep in his bones. The hail resonance, the signal, wasn't just awakening the Guardians. It was a beacon. And something else, something older and darker than even the dragons, was listening. They traveled through the intergalactic dark for what might have been days or centuries. The dragons didn't measure time the way humans did. Each movement carried them across light years and seconds, their wings folding space itself. Occasionally, Marcus saw echoes of distant civilizations, dim worlds orbiting dying suns, ruins where once light had lived. Wherever they passed, the dragons breathed their energy into the stars, reigniting them like torches in the dark. Marcus learned their language, not words, but harmonics. Each dragon's tone had layers, carrying names, emotions, history. They called him Lightbearer. It wasn't a title he wanted, but one he couldn't deny. One evening, if it could be called that, they gathered at the edge of a galaxy shrouded in dust. The dragons hovered in formation around a dying sun that flickered like an old candle. The Golden One, the Heartkeeper, spoke first. This star once birthed 1,000 worlds. Now it is hollow. The choir came here long ago. Marcus felt the air, if there was any, turn cold. The choir? Listen. He strained his ears. At first there was only silence. Then, faintly, beneath the hum of the universe, he heard it. A whispering, not of voices, but of absence. A vibration that canceled sound instead of creating it. The longer he listened, the colder he felt. His visor frosted, though there was no atmosphere. Something was moving beyond the light. Shapes formed, not solid, not shadow, but distortions. They blotted stars where they passed, devouring brightness. The dragon's luminous forms dimmed in their presence. The choir, the Heartkeeper said. They feed upon radiance. Once they sang across galaxies. Now they follow your spark. Marcus's heartbeat thundered. You mean they're here because of me? Because you woke us. The song of creation draws the silence of oblivion. The void trembled. The distortions grew sharper. Figures like rippling glass, their edges lined with nothingness. They moved soundlessly but emanated pressure, like deep-sea weight crushing against fragile lungs. One lunged. A wave of void surged toward him, and instinctively Marcus raised his hands. The dragons roared as one, unleashing torrents of stellar flame. The darkness recoiled but did not vanish. Its presence was endless. Marcus felt panic claw at him. He was a man among gods, helpless in a war of cosmic beings. Then he heard it. The heartbeat. Not his own, but hers. The dragon he'd saved. Her presence filled him, and light poured from his palms, brilliant and fierce. The beam struck the advancing void, cutting through the absence like sunrise through fog. The silence shattered. The dragons rallied, their songs harmonizing with his light. They sang in chords of fire, weaving energy that wrapped the void entities in chains of brilliance. The distortion writhed, shrieked without sound, and collapsed into collapsing stars. The choir fled, their shadows scattering. When it was done, the stars around them reignited, brilliant once more. Marcus collapsed, shaking, breath ragged. The Heartkeeper hovered beside him, her voice softer now. You bear the resonance of life. It answers your will. I almost killed myself doing that, he muttered weakly. Life demands cost, she said, but you gave what was needed. He floated in silence for a while, staring at the reborn light. How many of them are there, these choir things? Countless, born of the first entropy. They thrive where life falls silent. They will not stop. He swallowed hard. Then we have to wake the rest of you. All of you? Yes, said another. A deep violet dragon whose body shimmered like oil on water. But not all will wake willingly. Some have forgotten. Some became stars themselves, dreaming of peace. Marcus looked at the endless sky. Then I'll remind them. We'll remind them all. And so the journey began. He became their messenger, traveling in the luminous wake of dragons, speaking across the radio bands of forgotten colonies and derelict worlds. When human ships caught glimpses of glowing leviathans sweeping past their systems, they heard a voice, his voice, on every frequency. Do not fear. They are not here to destroy. They are here to heal. But not all listened. Far from the Accord's borders, military fleets were mobilizing. The Central Command had classified the dragons as potential existential threats. In their panic, they fired warning shots into the void, harpoons of energy meant to probe. One of the smaller dragons, a young one named Sereth, was struck. Her luminous form dimmed, fracturing into shards of dying starlight. Marcus felt her death like a blade through his chest. He screamed, his voice echoing across subspace. "Stop! You don't understand!" But fear seldom listens. He returned to known space to face them. His arrival aboard the flagship Vigilant was greeted with drawn weapons. Lyra Kale stood at the command deck, older now, her uniform bearing scars of sleepless nights. "You vanished a year ago," she said, "and now you come back leading these things?" "They're not things," Marcus said. "They're the reason we have stars. They're the reason we exist." She looked through the viewport, where faint lights moved among the constellations. "You don't know what they're capable of." "I do," he said softly. "I fixed one. She healed a star." The admiral beside her scoffed. "Healed? These entities manipulate stellar matter on a scale beyond control. If one decides to heal Sol, we're dust." Marcus's jaw tightened. "They don't destroy." "We do." Tension crackled in the air. Then, as if to punctuate his words, the void outside trembled. Alarms flared. "Incoming mass anomaly," shouted a technician. "Negative signature, it's the same as the Perseus readings." Marcus turned toward the window. The choir had found them again. The darkness poured through the star lanes like ink spilling into water, devouring light. Lyra looked at him, pale. "How do we fight that?" He met her gaze. "You don't. You sing." Before anyone could stop him, he stepped into the teleporter pad, tuning his frequency to the dragon's resonance. He vanished in a burst of light. Moments later, the sky above the fleet exploded with radiance. Dragons emerged, hundreds strong, answering his call. The Heartkeeper led them, her body blazing brighter than the sun. Together, they formed a shield of living light between the void and the fragile human ships. The choir's darkness crashed against them like a storm. Marcus's voice echoed through every ship's comm. "Hold your fire, lend your energy, tune your reactors to the pulse." "Are you insane?" an admiral shouted. "Do it!" Lyra barked. "Sync the frequencies." The ships aligned their power cores, transmitting energy into the dragon's harmonic field. Humanity's machines and the Guardian's living bodies sang together for the first time in cosmic history. The void screamed, recoiling, burning under the combined resonance. One by one, the shadows collapsed, their emptiness consumed by sound and light. When it was over, silence returned. Not cold and dead this time, but peaceful. The fleet floated amid the shimmer of newborn stars. Lyra's voice came through softly. "Marcus, we heard it. The song." He smiled faintly, though exhaustion was consuming him. "Now you understand." The Heartkeeper appeared beside him, immense and radiant. "They have joined the chorus. The song grows stronger." He nodded weakly. "What now?" "Now we wake the rest. Humanity would never be the same again." Word of the event spread faster than command could contain it. Across the colonies, people gathered under open skies, listening for the pulse that now beat faintly beneath starlight. Poets called it the rebirth. Scientists called it a quantum resonance phenomenon. The dragons called it hope. But Marcus knew it was only the beginning, because beyond the halo of the awakened stars, the darkness was stirring again. The choir was not defeated, only delayed. And in his dreams, the light of the dragons whispered one final warning. When the last star falters, the song will end. And you, light-bearer, must decide if creation deserves to sing again. He awoke aboard the Heartkeeper's back, drifting through a sea of galaxies. Her voice filled the silence around them, gentle as dawn. "You are of the Makers now, little light." But even they could not sing forever. He gazed at the endless sky. "Then I'll learn to sing louder." She laughed, a sound like a billion suns rising. And together, man and dragon flew into the glowing dark, their song rippling through space like a heartbeat that the void itself could never silence. The first sign came quietly. The stars did not dim or flare, they simply paused. For a moment, across the breadth of the galaxy, light itself seemed to hesitate. Marcus Hale stood at the edge of a reborn system aboard the living bridge of the Heartkeeper, his palms pressed against the glowing surface of her inner hull. The dragons had been waking worlds for months now, their song rippling from one galaxy arm to the next, igniting suns that had long gone cold. Humanity had joined them, their ships learning to sing in resonance, to feed the light instead of bleed it. The accord had become something new, an alliance not of war, but of caretakers. Yet deep within that harmony, Marcus had felt it, a note that did not belong, a void in the melody, rising like a shadow beneath their chorus. Now it was here. "The choir stirs fully," whispered the Heartkeeper. Her voice no longer sounded distant. It was within him, pulsing through every cell. Their conductor wakes. Marcus swallowed hard. "How long do we have?" Time has no meaning where it sleeps. But the silence grows stronger. The stars forget to burn. Outside, across the span of the system, light began to warp. The once golden sun flickered, its color draining into pallid gray. Around it, the fabric of reality quivered, as though sound itself had been stolen. The younger dragons trembled. Their songs faltered. The oldest among them lowered their heads in solemn understanding. One of them, a vast serpent of deep violet, murmured, "It comes from the abyss between galaxies, the place where even we dare not go." Marcus turned to the Heartkeeper. "Then that's where we go." The great dragon tilted her radiant eyes toward him. "It will end you." He smiled faintly, tired but unwavering. "Everything ends, but not today." There was no ceremony. The dragons folded space around them, and the fleet of human ships followed in their wake. They crossed through the luminous web of creation, leaving the known stars behind. The void beyond the galactic rim was different, thicker somehow, almost physical. The light of their bodies dimmed as if swallowed by the dark. Communication failed. Sensors died. Even thought felt heavy. When the darkness finally thinned, Marcus saw it. A shape so vast that the human mind could not measure it. It was not absence. It was form made from the lack of form. A wound in the universe, blacker than the space around it, pulsing faintly with inverse light. The conductor of the void choir. It did not move. It unmoved. Its presence made motion itself recoil. It was singing, but its song was silence. The moment it began, the younger dragons screamed, their bodies unraveling into dust. Even the Heartkeeper's glow faltered. Marcus fell to his knees. He could feel the sound tearing through him, shredding every particle of light inside his veins. His vision blurred. Through the pain, he shouted, "You said they were born of entropy, that they feed on the end of things. So let's give them something to choke on." The Heartkeeper's answer came as a roar that shook the void. Her wings unfurled, scattering fragments of starlight. She dove toward the conductor, her body blazing like a sun reborn. The choir awoke in full, the shadows around the conductor splitting into thousands of wraith-like figures, their edges rippling with nothingness. They swarmed, devouring light wherever it touched them. The dragons fought back, singing their ancient melody, weaving threads of life through the vacuum. Every note tore through the darkness. Every pulse reignited fragments of forgotten stars. Humanity's ships joined in, amplifying the frequency through reactor cores, turning technology into prayer. The battle was not fought with weapons, but with resonance. The struggle of sound versus silence, creation versus void. Marcus stood in the midst of it all, his body suspended within the Heartkeeper's luminous core. He could feel her heartbeat slowing, her energy fading. "The song fails," she said. "Their silence consumes all." He pressed his palms to her chest, feeling the rhythm falter. "Then I'll carry it." "You cannot. I already did once." He reached inward, into the faint echo that had never left him. The spark she had given him when he mended her heart. It burned inside him like a buried star, waiting. He drew upon it, not with logic or science, but with faith. Faith in hands that fix, in hearts that refuse to stop. The light burst through him, blinding and pure. The dragons felt it and turned their songs toward him, harmonizing. The fleet of human ships followed, their reactors pulsing in unison. The resonance built higher and higher, vibrating through every atom in existence. The conductor's form twisted, the silence cracking like ice under heat. But the void adapted. It shifted its song, deeper, older, a counterpoint of despair that resonated through the galaxies. Stars began to flicker out again. Marcus's light dimmed, his body trembling under the strain. The Heartkeeper cried out, her wings faltering. "You will burn away, little light." He smiled through blood and tears. "Then let me burn bright enough to be remembered." He closed his eyes and reached deeper still, beyond himself, beyond her, into the lattice of existence itself, the place where sound becomes space and space becomes time. He saw the makers, not as gods but as dreamers like him, engineers, builders, creators who once loved the light so fiercely that they made it eternal. He saw them fade, leaving behind their song in the dragons. And he understood. The makers had never truly died. Their memory lived in everything that refused the dark. He opened his eyes, and for a moment humanity's spark flared like a supernova. The light burst from him, white and gold and infinite. The choir's silence shattered. The conductor shrieked, its form unraveling into a storm of broken void. The dragons sang louder, their voices united across all spectra. The human fleet's reactors overloaded, releasing waves of harmonic radiation that wove into the melody. Across the galaxy, every awakened guardian joined in. Suns flared, dead stars reignited. The universe itself seemed to draw breath. When it was done, there was no explosion, just peace. The void was gone. The conductor had been undone, its essence scattered into harmless silence. Marcus floated amid the aftermath, his body barely whole, his consciousness fading. The Heartkeeper's voice came faintly, trembling with grief. "You gave all of yourself." He laughed weakly. "You'd do the same. You have become more than us. The light you carry, it will guide long after we fade." He reached up, fingers brushing the glowing surface of her chest. "Don't fade. Not yet. All things end, little light. But not all are forgotten." She lowered her immense head beside him. He could feel her warmth ebbing. Her scales dimmed one by one until only her eyes still burned. "The song must have a keeper." He shook his head. "I'm just human." So were the makers. Her light entered him, gentle, unstoppable. It wasn't pain. It was memory, energy, love. He felt himself dissolving, not dying but becoming. His mind expanded, merging with the lattice of stars, with every pulse of energy across galaxies. He saw himself reflected in the surfaces of 1,000 suns. He was no longer separate from the song. He was the song. The Heartkeeper's body faded into starlight, her essence merging with his. Where man and dragon had once been, now a new light blazed, a living beacon of creation. Across the galaxy, the Guardians paused in flight, bowing their colossal heads. On countless worlds, skies flared with auroras that sang like distant choirs. Humanity looked up and felt it in their bones, the heartbeat of something greater than gods. In the command deck of the Vigilant, Lyra Kyle stood before the viewport, tears streaking down her face as the new light blossomed. "He did it," she whispered. The admiral beside her could only nod, speechless. Across the Accord, all communication networks were filled with the same sound. A slow, rhythmic pulse, like the breathing of the cosmos. The hail resonance. It had returned, steady and alive. Centuries passed. Humanity spread further, guided by the song that echoed from the stars. No longer conquerors, they became caretakers, builders of suns, healers of worlds. They learned to weave resonance into their technology, to sing their ships through space rather than force them. They never forgot the name Marcus Hale. On the anniversary of the Great Illumination, children would look to the heavens and listen for the faint heartbeat of the cosmos, whispering, "Little light," still shining. And far beyond the reach of any telescope, at the edge of a quiet nebula, a figure made of light drifted beside a colossal silhouette. The dragon and the man, merged yet separate, watched a newborn star ignite. "It is beautiful," the Heartkeeper murmured. Marcus smiled. "It always was. Do you think the silence will return?" He gazed into the endless horizon of stars, each one a note in their eternal song. Maybe one day. But if it does, someone will hear it. Someone will fix it. The dragon laughed, the sound like galaxies awakening. Together they soared through the stellar winds, leaving behind trails of light that would one day become new constellations. And in the quiet wake of their flight, the universe hummed softly, not in fear, but in harmony. For as long as stars burned and hearts beat, the song would never end. And somewhere, across the infinite dark, the cosmos whispered back, "Humanity remembers."